Welcome to the Fire Family Collective podcast, the show dedicated to supporting the unsung heroes of the fire service, the wives, partners, and families who hold down the fort while their firefighters serve. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Fire Family Collective podcast. My name is Heather. This is my first time hosting. I am so excited and also a little bit nervous, so we'll see how this goes. But less about me and more about the topic of today's podcast. So today's conversation is going to be about a part of the fire life that isn't talked about enough. What happens when the life you built inside the fire life changes or ends? And today's guest has chosen to stay anonymous, so today we're going to call her Lóvely. Lóvely, can you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit to the guests of your connection to the fire service, who you are beyond the fire service, kind of a little bit of a background?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I was married to a firefighter for 19 years. I definitely saw all aspects of that, from starting out as a paid call firefighter and then working all the way up through the municipal fire department. And outside of being a fire wife, I'm a mama of two kids. I am a nurse, and now I'm navigating a different life than the one that I had originally planned on. My husband and I got divorced 2.5 years ago now. So
Okay, so you've been kind of through it all from the beginning, it sounds like, with your husband, started a family together, and now kind of a little distanced from the divorce, it sounds like.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can say I a little distance from the from the onset,
Yeah,
but still very much, when you're co-parenting and trying to figure all of that out, you don't get the opportunity to distance yourself too much. So, still very much intertwined in our lives, but the shock of it and the emotion of it
yeah,
is more regulated now for sure.
yeah, yeah. So you're not in the thick of it, but also still trugging along almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, along.
Figuring it out,
You don't
yeah.
get to avoid it. It's still gonna be there, but um, I feel like you're at a point where you can kind of reflect a little bit. It sounds like.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Okay, so I am curious about what were the early signs or early strains? Like, when did you notice kind of a shift or things
Mhm.
changing?
Um, I would say that initially after my first child was born was when I realized that maybe I was not equally paired with my partner. Um, Definitely the schedule is so hard on new moms. You're not sleeping and you are carrying the emotional, physical, mental load of raising the children for the most part. And if you don't have a lot of support,
Yeah.
bitterness can kind of take root. You know,
Oh,
you
yeah.
you feel really alone in
Yeah.
it.
And your body's recovering too. You yourself are recovering on top of taking care of it all. And then those shift changes of doing it all on your own. Were you also working at the time as a nurse?
I was not. I was very fortunate in that I was able to stay at home with my kids for the most part. I actually decided to become a nurse when I knew for sure that things were not going to work out and I knew I was going to need a way to support myself.
Yeah.
So that was a choice that I made further down. the road. Um, but initially I stayed at home. I did have like little part-time jobs that I would work, but very difficult to work around a fire schedule.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I
And
feel like I've experienced that firsthand.
yes. And then once my second child was born, it was like, there's no way, no one, you can maybe get, a family member to watch one of your kids, but watching a toddler and an infant is
Mhm.
another
Yeah.
ball game. So, once my second child was born, then I was really full time stay at home mom.
Yeah. Yeah, you were
Mhm.
kinda stuck in that position of there's not really many options unless you choose daycare, but in my opinion, daycare is very expensive and,
Absolutely. And
challenging
then
to have.
definitely. And then it's also, I know different departments work differently, but if your husband or your partner gets forced and then you're scrambling to try and find childcare or trying to find like, hey, can I drop them off so that you can go to your job and where you're going to be paying maybe more than you would actually earn that day.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah. So do you feel like there was, like, a balance of just the schedule, impacting and kinda like that resentment? Or do you think there's more so emotional, and what kinda, um, impacts do you think the job, like, emotionally impacted your husband in any ways?
Well, I think that for me specifically, I don't think I really knew I don't think I knew my husband that well when we got married. And I thought I did, but it's also different when you're seeing them come up in a job that demands so much and demands so much compartmentalization of their emotions. So I think that if your partner already has natural leanings towards maybe narcissism, maybe they have some narcissistic traits, maybe they have some other mental health things, I think that the fire department can certainly exponentially
Amp
heighten those
Yeah,
things,
amplify
amplify them.
all of it. Yeah,
Absolutely. And so in my case, I was already he already had some personality traits that should have been red flags, but when you're in love and you're
yeah.
young and you're just like ignoring them, um,
You have the rose-colored glasses on.
yes. And then it's like, oh, but he's going to be a firefighter, right? Like,
Yeah.
we like that. So,
Yeah,
certain things like his compartmentalization of things and his lack of being able to empathize, his lack of, being able to show up emotionally in our
yeah,
family. It I blamed the department a lot, but now with some distance, I think that it had maybe equal parts, and maybe
yeah,
part of it is him and part of it is that my I mean, these guys see things that they should never
yeah,
have to see, but somebody has to see it, and they're the ones that do. And if they're not able to cope well with the things that they see or they shut off their emotions altogether, then it leaves the the
down
ones at home
a tough
carrying that
yeah,
weight.
and it's down a tough path and almost,
Mhm.
like, spirals together of
Definitely.
just growing. So when you were kinda going through all of it and you had decided divorce was basically the path you guys were going down, how was it with, like, the department? Like, did you feel like you had to hold everything together? Was there, like, distance with friends maybe you've made at the department? Or, um, like, what challenges did you face?
I think that I had definitely not realized how much of my own identity was wrapped up into being a fire wife. And one of the first things he did was, rip that sticker right off my car. And, just kind of
Yeah.
like a petty thing, but also a like, wow, that is part of who I am and how I identify myself. And definitely got some coldness from his actual coworkers, and some of the wives as well. But I would say I fared better than some of the other wives have.
Okay.
And I know that I remember running into a a former wife after she and her husband got divorced and running into her just in, Target. And I said hello to her and she burst into tears.
Oh,
And I was like, are you okay? And
yeah.
her response was, no one has talked to me. No one has said
Oh,
hello to me. And so to some extent, I have definitely gotten the cold shoulder. But I would say in other ways, some of them have reached out to me and asked for support in their own experiences with
yeah.
what they're planning on doing. And then others have been cordial. Um,
So
and others have been cold as well. Yeah.
there's kind of been a balance of all the different aspects between people who maybe are seeing you and seeing your openness and going to you for support in their own ways, maybe because
Mm,
they feel isolated, and then the cold shoulder ones, and then the ones who are kind of keeping things friendly, it sounds like.
yes, for sure.
Um, what point do you think, like, was the turning point and the point, like, what aspect? Because I know in this whole dynamic of firefighters, fire wives, everything, like, this topic of divorce or splitting up isn't really talked about, but it is unfortunately very common in this line of work and these relationships with obviously the dynamic of everything they see, the mental health, the emotional, the resentment that builds up at home, there's it's all these things that impact it. But what point did you have to reach to know that you were ready to move on and be done? In a sense, obviously, you're not fully done, but you're still
um,
tied to him.
I think that that's a really complex question, even for me,
Okay.
knowing myself well.
Yeah.
There was a point where I had a tragedy that occurred in my life, and my husband was not emotionally supportive or empathetic, and very much it was very much that he didn't feel his marriage should have to suffer because of my tragedy.
Mm,
So I think that was a turning point for me where I knew that we were not in a partnership and that I was being seen as almost like property to him.
okay.
Um, After that, now that happened and I stayed for 13 more years. So after that, I it I know some people will probably balk at what I'm about to say, but when you have invested your life and your future,
Mhm.
it is very hard to give up that pension. It's very hard to say, like, if I walk out of this, I I don't know how my life is going to look anymore.
Yeah.
And um,
It's almost
you
like,
know,
you put your eggs on all in that basket, of
yeah,
support,
we
'cause
all
they
do
need the
when we get
support,
married.
you need they need the support too in all of it, and, it's not only, like, them working towards their future, but us choosing to support them and working towards our future as a whole, you know?
Well, and let's be very clear that stay-at-home moms, we don't earn a pension, but we are working our butts off.
Oh, yeah.
We are working so hard. And for whatever reason, that gets downplayed. Um, and maybe seen, and I can't speak for everyone, and just speaking
No,
from my
yeah.
own experience, that it I was under the impression that he was almost like doing me a favor by letting me stay home.
I
When what's the option when your schedule's insane? Like,
Yeah. No, I have quite a few friends who have literally said the exact same thing to me and with their husbands who are firefighters. It's a very, like, unfortunate situation that society sees stay-at-home I'm a stay-at-home mom,
Mhm.
but sees, like, this as almost, like, living off of someone else's success when in reality, I don't think my me and my husband, we got together and had a baby young, like, and that was before he was actually a hired firefighter. He was volunteering, and he went through paramedic school and the fire academy and all of that, and I had to stay home with the kid because he couldn't stay home with the kid, you
Yep,
know? Like,
yep,
he wouldn't be where he is if it wasn't for me staying home.
absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's really tricky because in my mind, and I'm sure you have listeners all over the world, I happen to live in a state that is, it's a no fault 50-50 state.
Mhm.
So I was entitled to half of his pension, which I gave up. I did not take his pension, and I don't take alimony. um and I did that in order to I kept the house. um so I'm I was able to financially take over my house payments, but that provided so my kids didn't have to have two new homes to live in. And then I'll get to keep all the equity in my home when I sell. But I also was so generous with him. Um, and I didn't want him to have to work for 10 more years. I didn't want him to not be able to afford a nice place for my kids to be when they went to his house. So,
It sounds like you were at a point of not, you were trying to be the most emotionally mature and also protective over yourself and your kids, of providing something to protect yourself to get to a point where you're safe in life, but also providing your kids that safety as well.
yeah, absolutely. And, a kind of also, just because I didn't want to be with him and I didn't see the relationship moving forward in a healthy way doesn't mean that I don't have love for him. Firefighters have a very hard, physically, mentally, emotionally demanding job. Like I said, I didn't want him to have to work an extra 10 years to make up for, having to pay me out of his pension. So, it felt like the right thing to do, and it also feels like something I would never advise someone else to do. Ever, like, take your
Yeah.
pension.
Yeah.
That's I will stand by that. You earn
Um,
that.
going back, so when you and your husband, when you had met him, got, together with him, was he already a firefighter, or was he I remember you said was he starting out as a firefighter?
He
What
was actually, he did he knew he wanted to be a firefighter. He did paid call. He did, volunteer and did the fire academy while we were engaged. And then, he actually got hired on with a municipal department very soon after we were married.
Okay. So you kinda didn't really know what to fully expect with this fire life.
No.
Everybody's kind of
Mm-mm.
yeah.
And I didn't have, it's not like my dad was a firefighter, so
Yeah.
I had no experience in the fire department.
Yeah. I feel the same way of me and my husband, we saw we had those rose-colored glasses on for this fire life of what it could be, and it is there is great things with it, but there is a lot that is not talked about of how difficult um, different aspects or the impact mentally and emotionally it has on everyone. How were you going back to kids? Because I'm like, I mean, this job impacts kids. How were you able to like talk to your kids about like were they little babies when it happened? Were they a little older?
No, they are teenagers. My oldest is actually she's 19, and then my youngest is 16. So they had seen they had seen that things were not working out. Kids are so perceptive. They know. And that's another thing I would say is that you might think you're hiding it from your kids. You're not. They know. And didn't they didn't want us to be unhappy either. They wanted for us to have a fair shot at whatever life we wanted to have, I think. So, not that it's been easy. It hasn't. It's been really painful, um, but they knew that it wasn't working.
Okay, so we had some technical issues. Unfortunately, we lost the second half of this episode. So we are so grateful that Lovely is able to be back here to help us kind of finish up the rest of this episode and re record because we think that the rest of this episode was a very important part of the conversation. So we're going to go ahead and do our best to re-record it. The conversation might be slightly different, but we're here to have the conversation.
Perfect.
Lovely. We kind of left off where you were telling us that your kids were 16 and 19, and the question was, how did you talk to them about it? How did that kind of go?
Yeah, so my kids were definitely aware that my husband and I were not happy. They had seen us fighting. They were very perceptive about everything. And when we when we ended up, sitting them down and telling them, it didn't come as a huge surprise to them. I think for the most part, our kids recognize that we're not compatible and we're not a great couple together. So it's hard, and they definitely have been grieving and definitely been going through that process and all of the stages of grief that come along with that. Um, but I think for the most part, they're aware that it's kind of for the best for us and for them. You don't want to model that for your children. You don't want to model that that's what a marriage should look like when um both parties are just spinning their wheels trying to figure it out when
Yeah.
it's not going to work. So,
Yeah, I think that that is like honestly so important, especially with them being at that pivotal age of coming into adulthood. Um, it's really important them for them to see, especially see you and what you're doing because I feel like we lose ourselves and you've had this unfortunate, but also fortunate opportunity to kind of rebuild yourself. Could you tell us about like that shift?
yeah, I I have absolutely tried to model for my children what a strong woman looks like. I w- I have really tried to embody the fact that I never want my daughter to feel like she's stuck. I never want my daughter to feel like she has no escape or like this is the best it's going to be for her. I want her to know at any given time we have the ability to course correct and build the life that we want for ourselves. And for my son, I it's important to me that he not be afraid of a strong woman. I want him
Yeah.
to see what a strong woman looks like and to know that with strength there's also softness and beauty. You know, you don't have to be like a hard woman to be a strong woman.
Yep.
Um I think that there's I think that my kids seeing me doing all of this on my own, they saw me as a strong woman anyway because I was a fire wife. And, you know, who's the one who's there every single day in, day out, making the meals,
Yep.
helping with the homework, doing the laundry,
Yeah.
cleaning them up when they're
Yeah.
sick, like all of the things. They already knew that about me. But now, at least what I've tried to verbalize to them is like, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's not,
Yep.
there's no shame in being alone. There's not even shame in being divorced. It's so stigmatized, but really I feel like it's far worse to try and make something work that you know isn't going to work. We only get this one beautiful life, and
Yep.
it's if it's not working, it's not working.
Um, I am curious what I hear, like the empowerment of yourself, of like how strong you are with the words that you're saying right now. Was it like that when you were going through the actual divorce process? Did you get to a point before? I mean, I know us as firewives, we are strong. We are strong women. We have to handle this life uh, without our husbands half the time and figure things out while they're gone and on strike teams and all these other things. Um, or is this kind of some healing that you've done that's led you to
Oh,
feeling this way?
absolutely healing. I think that I had mentally prepared myself for some of it. I had walked myself through how am I going to feel walking into my closet and not seeing my husband's clothes there? How am I going to feel um when I have to do all of the things all on my own all of the time? And I had mentally prepared myself for it, but nothing prepares you for the reality of the situation. And that shift from going from being someone that you thought loved you, and this is just my case, this is not the same for everyone, but I
Yeah.
definitely became his enemy. And um, I've said many times the only thing worse than being his wife is being his ex-wife. Um, but even in all of that, like, at first, it felt like I had lit my life on fire,
Oh,
like,
wow.
like a wildfire with an earthquake, with a tornado, with
Oh my
everything.
God. Yeah.
But the dust does settle, and you learn to find your new normal, and you learn to be like, "Oh, yeah, this is I know you. I know exactly who you are." Like, I know how to predict how your behavior is going to be, and you just kind of settle into it. And it stops being as raw, like any
Yeah.
wound when it's fresh is painful, but eventually it starts to heal, and you you adjust to it.
Um, what steps did you take to kind of rebuild this life of yours and rediscover yourself and who you are outside of this role as the fire wife? We get so attached to this
Mhm.
um as like who we are. How did you kind of rebuild yourself and rediscover who you are?
Uh, there definitely was a shift. I definitely felt I mourned the loss of my identity in that way of not being a fire wife anymore. Um, but I went to therapy. I worked with a life coach, and I've had a strong support of girlfriends around me to remind me of who I am when I would forget or when I would feel like, what have I done? And I've absolutely had those moments where I've been like, what have I done?
Yeah.
Should I try and fix this? Should I try and you know, go back in time and somehow not do this? But the reality of the situation is that you know if it's right or not. You know intuitively. Your heart knows, your gut knows, your brain knows. If you're dreading him coming home when he's been gone on a strike team or gone for 3 days and you're dreading him coming home, that's not good. And no one should have to live in a home where they feel afraid or sad or walking on
Yeah.
eggshells. And it's one thing to shift that hat. You have
Yeah.
to shift that hat when your partner comes home, but it's another thing to be like, it's too much effort to shift that hat. I would rather just do it alone.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling like that, then I would really suggest get a strong support team around you and start taking the steps
Yeah.
because life
I
is
feel
too
like it's
short.
this whole topic is very under talked about openly. I feel like it's very important for us to be kind of opening this up for people to see because this is something that unfortunately does happen a lot in this community. Not all the time, obviously,
Mhm.
but it's a higher rate than other jobs, and I think it's very difficult because there is so much mental, physical, emotional impact of this job and how it impacts them and the trauma that they carry and then go forward and bring home secondhand trauma to the family, I found the quote from earlier. Those listeners, I was talking about a quote in the first time, but I found the quote. So now that we've recorded, I get to actually say the full quote. So the quote was from Brene Brown, and it's people are doing the best they can with the tools they have, talking about how we as people are doing the best we can. But obviously there's trauma we carry, the emotional, right? And I think you are showing this uh, to other women who might be in similar situations that we are doing the best we can. You're doing the best you can, and now you are going to continue live a life that is better for you personally and for your healthier for your kids to see.
Absolutely. I nobody gets married thinking that they're going to get divorced someday. We go in with the best of intentions, and when we're standing up there saying those vows, we mean them. We're not saying them like, I didn't stand in
Yeah.
front of my family and friends and swear to God that I would love this man forever, only to 20 years later be like, just kidding, not so much. Like that wasn't ever my intention. And I will say, I gave 100% of what I had and what I could give. And I tried everything that I could to make my marriage work, and I maintain my vow that I will love him, and I will respect him as the father of my children and as a human being taking space on this earth at the same time that I've shared breath with, that I've shared children with. Like, of course, I will always have love for him, but that doesn't mean I want to be his wife. And it doesn't mean I want to sleep next to him at night. And it doesn't mean that I want to be in a relationship that's painful for me,
Yeah.
and setting an example for my children of something that I don't believe that love looks like. So, whether you're a fire wife or whether you're a wife in another profession. I just think that, you should trust your heart. And if your heart is leading you in this way, there's absolutely light at the end of the tunnel. You see all these Instagram posts about women like dancing in the streets. I don't know if I'm there yet, but but I
I
definitely I
always
just
I always say Instagram's fake, social media's fake, we
yeah,
see the best
yeah,
of the best of it all or the most controversial. Um, that's why I like this space where it is real people being vulnerable, opening up, having real connection, whether this helps one person or a thousand, this is
absolutely.
real conversation where people can actually have these connections versus seeing the highlight reel that is on
Definitely.
social
Definitely.
media.
Yeah.
I want to know uh, what has this experience taught you about yourself?
Oh gosh. Um, that is a very big question because this has been a time of like unprecedented growth in my life. I have learned about myself that in my old life, I was willing to let people treat me like crap in order to make them feel better. I was willing to take all of everyone else's pain, and I can remember shortly after us splitting up and him just probably for 45 minutes just berating me, just telling me every
Oh,
awful, horrible thing that he probably had been storing up for years. And I just sat there and took it, and I didn't fight back. And I didn't say anything back. And I've really, especially this year, tried to be thinking more about embodying the mentality of a rose. A rose is so beautiful, so fragrant. Um, one of like the flower that means everything.
yep. Yeah.
But if you mess with it and you don't respect it and you get poked by a thorn, that's on you. So I've been really trying to embody both sides of that, that yes, I am lovely. And, like I am a graceful,
Yeah.
empathetic, kind, loving person, but no more am I going to let myself be taken for granted or taken advantage of. Now you respect me or you lose access to me.
It sounds like you've set some clear boundaries that are strong, and are also um, discovering some inner strength and appreciation for yourself too. What I want to know, what does like co-parenting look like? How does that come into play with you and the kids, and um, how I guess what does that look like with this fire life? The schedules are always changing. Um,
Yeah, it really does suck. It's really hard.
I
Um,
appreciate the brutal honesty.
it's tricky because at first, I definitely tried to again, with my people pleasing and me with my you're more important than me. I definitely tried to maintain his fire schedule and work around that. So I would schedule myself on his days off so that he could have the kids and he wasn't missing any time. And ultimately my kids were going back and forth way too much. It was way too hard on them. Um there was some control issues happening as far as like when I was allowed to see my children, which was not in our divorce agreement. Um, and ultimately, I ended up having to fight for a 1 week on, 1 week off custody agreement. And since I've done that, I've seen my son thriving. It's been so much better for him. He knows what day he's going to dad's, what day he's going to mom's. And yeah, it doesn't really work well with the fire schedule, but at the same time, that's kind of a perk of my kids being older is, when
Yeah.
my 19-year-old can stay with my son when his dad's at work.
Yeah.
So it does make things, a little bit easier in that way. I don't know how that would work if you had younger children trying to do it, but that's what has worked for us is to do the 1 week on, 1 week off. And then for now, my ex-husband and I are basically parallel parenting. I wouldn't say that we're co-parenting. He does his own thing and I do my own thing, and we really only communicate over extremely important, um, situations. Otherwise, he and I don't really
Yeah.
communicate much.
Um, Thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting too, because I feel like it does, like you said, it would probably be different if it was younger children, like if my kids or something, because I have a 3-year-old.
Mhm.
So it is interesting to see how different dynamics, different family systems kind of all work. Let's switch it up to a little bit of encouragement to others and a little bit more positivity now. Um, what would you say to someone who's silently struggling in their fire marriage?
I would say to not be silent. Um, the silence is what, in my experience, can build resentment, and I think resentment can make you make choices that are not in alignment with the type of person you are, or who the choices that you wanna make. They can make you make decisions that are outside of what you know, and ultimately, the silence in that silence, you're betraying yourself, which is the worst
Yeah,
betrayal you can do. Um,
absolutely.
don't suffer silently. If your husband is willing to try to get some help, that's a tricky thing too. We did try marriage counseling, and my in my experience, my ex-husband would take those vulnerable moments and use them against me at home and kind of twist things at home where the therapy did not end up being a safe space for me. So, if your husband is truly willing to work on things and save your marriage, I think therapy or, a marriage group at your church or
Yeah. Or
whatever.
even therapy for yourself, right? Because we can't, what is this saying? Like, we can't help others if we're not taking care of ourselves. I don't know what the exact
Yeah.
saying is, but
Well, you
it's
can't
that
pour from an
idea.
empty cup for sure.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
would hope that, like, if you're having these thoughts and feeling like that would absolutely be like stage 1, absolutely.
Yeah.
Start doing therapy and building up your own self-confidence and trying to work through those feelings. But if
Yeah.
you can save your marriage, then absolutely, like, that is the way to go. It's not easier,
Yeah.
it's not better to be divorced,
No.
but
I can imagine.
yeah, but if you can save it, if your husband's willing to work on things, if you feel like you can meet in the middle, then do that. But if not, then have a way that you're going to be able to support yourself financially, have a good support group, and start making plans to to get out. I mean, I support that
And save
100%.
it and save yourself, you know? No one's coming to save you, really, right?
You
It's this idea that we have to be the ones ultimately to kinda save ourselves, right?
Remember in Titanic, like, that when the ship just went down
Eh,
and it, like, sucked people under with it? Like, you gotta get out before that ship is gone, or it's
yeah,
gonna suck you down with it.
yeah.
When you see what's going on and you know there's no saving it, save yourself.
What ways can the wives, how can we help someone who might be going through a divorce or a situation like this? What ways would you have liked to seen people help, or what ways did work?
It's such a tricky thing because you need to feel absolutely safe. And um I would love it if the fire department was a completely safe place where, you could reach out to your fire sisters and they would support you. I don't know if that's the case in every department. And and I would love to see more community and more honesty and just openness
Yeah.
without judgment, like across the board. Like the husbands need it too, but the wives, just feeling like I have a safe place to go and I can be
Yeah.
honest and I can be transparent and know that that person I'm speaking to is going to keep my secrets, isn't going to tell their husband what a piece of whatever my husband
Yeah.
is. It's very tricky. I definitely felt like a need to protect my husband during our marriage. Like, as far as anyone in the apartment knew, my husband was the
Oh,
best, because I was
yeah.
stimulating his ego too. And,
We
um,
get so caught up into,
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess, like this idea of what we want, whether or not it's the reality of what's happening.
Oh, in a perfect
Um,
world, we would have a sisterhood. Absolutely.
yeah.
In a perfect world.
I appreciate, because what you are doing right now is opening it up. You're opening up conversations, and someone to might be listening and being like, "I'm not alone,"
Yeah.
and maybe they will then ripple effect, reach out to someone else. So I think it is. I agree with you. Like, having someone who will just listen, not judgmentally, and just be there. It sounds like if someone that is just kind of there to hear and support and not pass judgment, or not, you know, spread
And
out
and be
rumors,
protective
or
of your
yeah,
family, just like you would your real
yeah,
your biological sister. You wanna protect them and you want to love on them, and that would be ideal. Our children grow up together. We go to each other's baby showers, we go to each
yeah,
other's birthday parties, um and then to it is very hard when that kinda gets taken away, that part of your life, that part of your family, just like your mother-in-law gets kinda taken away,
yeah.
your fire family gets taken away from you too in some aspects.
Um, One last question for you is, what is something that is unexpectedly beautiful after going through this? Something that is beautiful, or something that's positive in your life right now? What is something that's come out positive from this?
I really love who I am right now, and I am unapologetic about the space that I take up and the choices that I make and the peace that I feel in my home, the peace that I am able to give my children. Uh, I'm really happy with the growth I've seen in myself and just kind of the love and the peace that I've maintained in myself. I feel like I'm not a bitter woman anymore. I'm not angry. I'm not resentful. I kind of just accept things for what they are because I'm not spinning my wheels. I'm not trying to make something
Yeah.
work that isn't going to work anymore. I can accept him more for who he is now because it's not as, um,
Tied to you, like
yeah,
interconnected
yeah.
almost.
It's not about me anymore. Like I'm
Yeah.
not suffering anymore from all of the things that I wish he would do or wish he wouldn't do. Um,
Yeah.
he can go and be his own person and I can be mine.
Sounds like, sounds like you're feeling more whole and more healed, you know? I can hear it in the way you're speaking and the way this conversation has gone is just like, a very strong woman, I'll say that. Yeah, very, very strong. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this out with a quote that says, "Whether you're in the middle of a hard season, rebuilding after loss, or simply trying to hold it all together, your story matters, and there is a life, identity, and purpose beyond every chapter, even the ones you never expected to end." Thank you guys for listening, and I hope everyone has a great day. Bye.